Hello, Telesur English presents a new episode of China Now, our media's production that showcases the culture, technology, and politics of the Asian giant. In this first segment, we are going to start with the Chinese people that now have their own version of Starlink. Also, Chinese Navy responding to provocations from Philippines. Likewise, China calling on the international community to help Sudan over its humanitarian crisis and more. Let's see.
China Current is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started.
Welcome to China Current, your weekly news report on what's happening in China. I'm Lisa. In this episode, the Chinese people now have their own version of Starlink. China called for American athletes to take more anti-doping tests. The Chinese Navy has responded to provocations from the Philippines. China calls on the international community to help Sudan alleviate its humanitarian crisis. The British Foreign Secretary plans to visit China. Let's start with the news that might worry Elon Musk the most. On the 6th of August, a Long March 6A rocket lifted off from the Taiyuan Launch Center and carried 18 satellites into orbit. This kicks off China's ambitious project called 1,000 Sails. In 2024, the project plans to launch 108 more satellites with a goal of deploying 648 satellites in the first phase. By the end of 2030, the network will offer global coverage with the ultimate aim of connecting mobile phones worldwide via 15,000 satellites, allowing you to browse TikTok in the middle of the Sahara Desert. The program is operated by Shanghai Spacecom Satellite Technology Limited and is not just about reaching remote areas. The 1,000 Sails network will also enhance internet speed in regions that already have coverage. For example, satellite communication from Shanghai to New York over a distance of about 150,000 kilometers will have a latency of around 50 milliseconds. That is faster than submarine cables, which relies on multiple routers and undersea cables. The 1,000 Sail project is also a more economically friendly method for developing countries to enjoy faster internet. Currently, communication base stations cover less than 6% of the global surface area. Although 5G internet is faster, the surface area provided by a 5G base station is smaller than a 4G base station. Connecting the entire world with 5G wireless network might require 10 million base stations, costing around $220 billion in construction and $21 billion annually in electricity fees. However, providing global 5G network service via satellite is much cheaper. For example, the second-generation Iridium satellite network costs $3 billion and has a lifespan of 10 to 15 years and an annually depreciation cost of approximately $300 million. China's 1,000 Sails project and SpaceX Starlink plans are similar in function but have many differences. For instance, to ensure stronger 5G network signals received by mobile phones, the 1,000 Sails project will lower the satellite network altitude to 300 to 500 kilometers, while Starlink satellites orbit at an altitude of 550 kilometers. Additionally, all 18 satellites launched in the first batch were deployed by the Shanghai Engineering Center for Microsatellites. According to Cao Caixia, the project's chief designer, a typical satellite takes about 3 to 5 years from component procurement to satellite production, and now it can be accomplished in under 2 days on Shanghai's fully automated production line, which can produce over 300 satellites annually. This urge to speed up satellite production is not only driven by the desire for global connectivity, but also by the pressure from the United States. Low Earth orbit can accommodate up to 60,000 satellites, and SpaceX Starlink plans to launch 42,000 of them. Under the International Telecommunication Union's first come, first serve rule, this could limit options for non-American satellites. So the race is on to ensure that future global users have choices beyond US-controlled networks. Fortunately, this is not the first time China has faced competition to ensure fair resource distribution. In 1993, the United States agency claimed that the China-based container ship Yinghe was carrying chemical weapon materials to Iran. As a result, the GPS signal in that area was blocked, leaving the ship stranded on high seas for 33 days without supplies, including food and fresh water. A subsequent inspection by a joint Saudi-United States team concluded that the cargo did not contain any chemical weapons precursors. However, the US government stated that there would be no apology. In 2020, China completed the Beidou network, a constellation of satellites forming a global navigation system to challenge the monopoly of the US government-owned GPS. Moving on, Chinese athletes want the same treatment for their American opponent on the doping issue. During the Paris Olympics, Chinese athletes faced an unexpected challenge. Each swimmer was subjected to an average of 5 to 7 urine tests per day, with just a few hours between each test. Over the course of 10 days, this rigorous routine has resulted in a staggering 200 tests, averaging 20 tests per day. The World Anti-Doping Agency required frequent testing in high-risk areas, typically 3 times a day for 75% of athletes. However, for Chinese athletes, the frequency has far exceeded the standard, with conservative estimates suggesting more than double the usual requirement. Additionally, as many as 95% of Chinese athletes have been tested. In this context, the concept of fairness becomes fairly questionable. On the 8th of August, the China's anti-doping agency pointed out that the United States has never issued warning to its athletes about potential contamination from meat. Despite hundreds of positive trenbolone tests worldwide in recent years, only a small number of US athletes have faced sanctions, often escaping punishment based on claims of meat contamination. 19 is not the only athlete who has been cleared by the United States Anti-Doping Agency under unusual circumstances. Gil Roberts, an American Olympic champion in relay race, was exonerated in 2017, claiming his positive test was caused by kissing his girlfriend. However, Roberts tested positive again in 2022, resulting in a 16-month suspension. The president of WADA has stated that the United States is one of the world's largest markets for illicit steroid and performance-enhancing drugs. And according to a recent WADA statement, 31% of US athletes were not sufficiently tested in the 12 months leading up to the Tokyo Games. Except for the American athletes doping issue, the Philippines is also on the radar. On the 7th of August, the Philippines conducted a joint military exercise with the US, Canada, and Australia in the South China Sea. During the third such exercise within the past 10 days, a joint statement claimed that the exercise was intended to address common maritime challenges. Western media outlets have been quick to highlight the participation of 4 countries in this drill. However, the reality on the water was different. The 3 Chinese destroyers shadowing the exercise noted that only 4 ships actually participated. Meanwhile, China also organized its Navy and Air Forces to conduct a joint patrol near Huangyan Island in the South China Sea. Unlike a similar exercise in April, Chinese state media did not disclose the specific region of this drill, giving Philippine Navy a chance to practice the recognized skills. Considering that China's South Sea Fleet has more than 120 warships, this test may not be too challenging. The crisis in the South China Sea may be under control, but Sudan's humanitarian crisis continues. On the 6th of August, China's representative spoke at the UN Security Council and emphasized the humanitarian situation in Sudan. With the conflict in Sudan stepping into its 16th month, China has noted the recent reports by the IPC Famine Review Committee and is deeply concerned about the humanitarian situation in Sudan, particularly the severe food crisis highlighted in the report. Since the outbreak of armed conflict in Sudan, the Chinese government has provided emergency humanitarian assistance worth $1.37 million, including 939 tons of rice. China called on the international community to take more concrete action, adding that these actions should avoid using humanitarian assistance and food security as a tool for pressure or sanctions. Next, let's focus on another international news. Following the visit of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni to China at the end of last month, the UK's new Foreign Secretary David Lammy also plans to visit China. According to Bloomberg, on 6th of August, Lammy is considering a visit to China as part of the new Labour government's effort to recalibrate UK-China relations. He met Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Laos at the end of July. Both of them expressed a desire to promote long-term communication. The UK government has shown its interest in mending relations with China a month ago. Before becoming the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer said his government would carry out what he described as an audit of UK-China ties as one of the first things that we will do. However, just last month, the new head of the UK Army claimed they're getting prepared to fight a war with China, Russia, or Iran in 3 years. So, the US government has to decide which agenda to prioritize if it wants to achieve a 3-year trade and investment plan just like Italy. And that is all for today. Thank you for watching this episode of China Currents. If you have any thoughts or comments about our show, please reach us at the email address below. We look forward to hearing from you and see you next time.
We'll go for a short break, but we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to China Now. In this second segment, we have Thinkers Forum with Di Dongshen, Professor and Vice Dean of the School of International Relations of the Raman University of China, and Heiko Bers, Economics Professor of the North Business University in the Netherlands, talking about if China's economy has reached its peak. Let's have a look.
Hi, Professor D. Thank you for joining this meeting, and I'm looking forward to our discussion to come.
My pleasure.
The short-term economic development is driven by, we call that total demand in the economy, and therefore you have a sort of cyclical pattern of economic growth. Sometimes it is 4%, sometimes it is 7%. But maybe in the longer term, it is on average 5%. And so if you are talking about whether the economy peaked or not, then I think the focus should be a little bit more on the longer term. So what are the longer term drivers behind economic development? Then you talk about opening up, then you talk about education, technological advancement, innovative behavior, and all these factors. And then I think you may come to another conclusion, that still there is a lot of potential for the Chinese economy to continue economic development, maybe not based on labor force, maybe not based on all kinds of easy drivers, but on elements like, again, innovative behavior, productivity, efficiency. And I think there is still some room for that.
Obviously, I agree with the professor said, as you mentioned, that in the short term, economic performance is driven by demand. Yeah, but long term speaking, it's driven by investment. Yeah. So it's related to competitiveness, and the long-term global competitiveness is related to your investment on which sector, and whether it's efficient, whether it's related to the technology improvement. But between them is the debt. You know, the short-term economic growth is driven basically, if we world is driven by the debt. In the past several decades, the whole world economy is driven by the debt, especially by the U.S. debt. The whole U.S. nation, either the public sector or the private sector or the company sector, or the financial sector, they expanded their debt, and the whole world economy is following, to pump up. And China benefits from the growth of the U.S. debt, because as we see that some of the Japanese-owned or Korean-owned or American-owned business is moving, is diversifying their investment, diversifying the purchasing of the supply chain from mainland China to some other areas like Southeast Asia or South Asia or Mexico and so on. That's something making some difference on Chinese economy in the recent years. But more importantly, if we look at the fact that if we compare the economic size of to the economy to the United States and China, okay, we have more than 3 to 4 times of the size of population, and we have Chinese citizens working very hard, very diligent, at least as diligent as hard as Americans, and we have a huge population, well educated. So why the Chinese economy still only 65% of U.S.'s GDP? That doesn't make sense. You have bigger size of population, and the quality of the population is not poorer than others, than the United States. So why your economy is much smaller? So my explanation is also about the debt issue, deglobalization era since 2008. And especially recently, the decoupling or deglobalization process is speeding up. So that hurt Chinese economy to some extent. But the problem is, I do not agree with the so-called China peak perspective, because at the end of the day, it's not only United States, but also Chinese government could also borrow more and more money to put the money to improve the social welfare. From long-term speaking, I agree with Professor that China still we are going to have another wave of long-term growth ahead. But the difference is before it's driven by the U.S. expansion of debt, and in future it should be driven by the Chinese growth of the debt.
My impression is that as long as activities in the supply chain that does not create so much value added in the Chinese economy, it does not hurt the economy so much, because we want to get away from low value added assembly activities clearly in the supply chain. So if we move on the smiling curve away from assembly, and that these activities are moving away to Vietnam or to other places, I think that is even a positive element of the longer term Chinese economic development.
Since 1992, China introduced a lot of FDI from Southeast Asia, from Japan, Korea, and also from the United States and Europe. It's a process of FDI coming to expansion the global supply chain, especially East Asian supply chain, and China was weaved into the smiling curve, as you mentioned. We were at the bottom. We were doing the processing and re-export industry. So the added value is really low, and hence the Chinese people's salary and consumption is really low. That's something interrelated. But nowadays, as I mentioned, the quality of the population has improved dramatically, especially given the fact that every year we have nearly 10,000 students and 60% from STEM disciplines. We have such a big high level, or at least the middle level labor supply. But the reality is the demand for such a labor market is still structurally as a mass matched, because we still have so many factories, but we cannot create enough jobs for in the office buildings for these young kids. So hence, it's a natural process that China is graduating. I call it graduating from this process industry of the supply chain owned by the foreigners, foreign global capital. So today, I'm happy to see that although the growth rate is relatively low, but the growth quality is quite high, because China is doing a lot of progress in industries like car making. Yeah, not only EV cars, electronic vehicles, but also even traditional automobiles. Mobile cars, traditional cars. Chinese technology and quality is substantially improving. So I can see that, and Chinese products are competitive globally. So that makes a huge difference. And we have other new products like chips industry. Although we were sanctioned. Nowadays, Huawei makes substantial improvement in this sector, and so I'm quite happy with the quality improvement of Chinese economy, and especially its manufacturing industry.
Yeah, I fully agree with your point, and I would say in the West we have the feeling that market forces will create these structural adjustments from low tech to high tech, and that we have to give the freedom to the market, and the market will result in this type of developments. At the same time, I think what we see in emerging markets, and mostly in Asia, is that of course this may take too long, and you could even indicate that as a market failure, and therefore you need government interference to make this transition happening from low-skilled value-added or low value-added to much higher value-added sectors like the electric vehicles. So I think it is quite logical from an economic point of view that we see government interference to make this transition happening. On the one hand, we have the Western way of more or less creating economic development, which we may use the phrase of the Washington Consensus, where we implement market forces and where we implement all kinds of liberalization, and where you need to have a certain type of people in your economic system. While now we see clearly that we have differences worldwide, and that we need to implement regional features in economic development systems. You may refer to that as the Beijing Consensus or the Mumbai Consensus, and also we have the South Korean growth model. And I think we need to emphasize that this Washington Consensus is out of context today, also in Europe, because we more and more think that a big market also needs a big government, and that we cannot have only the emphasis on market forces, but that we need to have government intervention. Do you think that this also relates to, in many cases, the middle income trap discussion? Because the idea is that to escape the middle income trap, you have to have a sort of I would say growth factors which may generate increase of efficiency and productivity to make the jump from middle income to rich income. China is on the edge now of the high middle income country towards the rich, and then it is linked to the way of innovative behavior, how you can make that jump. There, I think also you see this combination of indeed belief in market forces, but at the same time the belief that this government interference is needed, and that efficient government is needed. And if you look at countries like Brazil, you see that maybe the government is too big and therefore not efficient, while in other countries maybe the government is too small, maybe in the US. So finding an optimum government which fits into the stage of your economic development process.
As what we see is many developing countries or many countries who get partially developed. Yeah, in the process of industrialization, they produce and export something, but they failed to upgrade its industry to a more sophisticated and more added value ones. As you mentioned just now, Brazil and some of the Southeast Asia countries. In 1980s and early 1990s, they did quite well, but at the end of the last century, they failed and there was stagnation. They believed too much in the market. They ignored the importance of the government. When you first get industrialized, for the first part of industrialization, the government policy should should be preferential or take care of the capital owners, especially the real business owners, to help them to be competitive, and inevitably at the cost of its own people's welfare. So we look back on the history over the past 200 years, include Great Britain, including mainland Europe, including Soviet Union or many other nations. A successful industrialization process, the first part is about depriving the ordinary people's social welfare and subsidizing the manufacturing, subsidizing the export. Yeah, almost inevitably. But if you do not reverse the first trend, you will be in the so-called middle income trap, because, as I mentioned, if you always take care of the business owners, and then the result is the overwhelming majority of the population is to be affording and to be able to purchase in your own products. So if you want to really get great, a great transformation from the middle income to a high income, then you will have to put a lot of resources, compensate the ordinary people, to make them, to enrich them, or not necessarily get them rich, but make them able to pay for the products, for the high quality products that they themselves made. So it's like a zigzag. First you have to go right. The policy is go right, a so-called political right. If it's right, you are take care of the rich people. You take care of the business owners. You are inevitably depriving to some extent your own ordinary people's social welfare. Then the second part, you should be turned left to compensate the losses of the ordinary people, to make them be able to do and at the same time, of course, you have to invest heavily on the research and development to help the ordinary business. In this process, it will be cruel to ordinary business, because that means a lot of business owners will fail.
The right side angle and the left side angle, they both need the government interference. So that is precisely why what you said before, that just having the paradigm of more market and less government and that more market means automatically less government. That is a paradigm which we should not follow. We should follow the paradigm of market needs government and government needs markets, obviously. And this type of pragmatism, how to implement government policy in a very pragmatic way, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right, I think is also a key element in making this jump to and away from the middle income trap.
Everybody is competing, climbing the ladder, and only very few people, very few nations are able to climb to the highest place. Yeah, that's my framework of understanding. It's not necessarily a natural right. It's not the rights for every nation to get developed. That may be annoying expression. It would be maybe less, not that much correct, but only very few nations at the top are able to produce high quality, high add value products and have the so-called technological monopoly position, very beneficial, and enjoy high life quality. But there's always many nations so-called trapped in the middle because of for various reasons. Yeah, for example, some of nations, because the industry will be destroyed by the source, like Russia, like Middle Eastern countries, like even South Africa, yeah, or Brazil, and maybe some other countries for different reasons, because they failed to turn left from the tipping point, turn the policy to left, to help the poor people, to enrich them, to make a society flat and equal and more fair. And maybe some other countries, because their political system are unable to absorb the overseas global shock for various reasons. But at the end of the day, there will always be many nations trapped in the middle, for various reasons. I don't think that there's final answers. So what is the right thing to do? Yeah, but we definitely could point out a lot of bad things, a lot of wrong things that many countries could make to make themselves stagnate during the development competition. Yes.
Yeah, and maybe we also put sometimes too much emphasis on indicators like GDP for economic development. Then emerging markets with a low GDP per capita may be very happy, or maybe having a relatively high rank in the Human Development Index. So in that sense, maybe the whole GDP discussion also relates to the middle income discussion, or the middle income trap discussion.
I agree with you that GDP is very misleading, because it mixes the tradable goods with the non-tradable goods. Now, the tradable outputs and the non-tradable outputs, and I perceive them as something same. But in my framework of understanding the whole world, especially the economy, how the society runs, how they compete with each other, the non-tradable sector should not be perceived as real economic activities. I perceive non-tradable sector, like, for example, services in the restaurants, services in the hair cutting services, that kind of things. They should not be perceived or counted as wealth creation. They should be perceived as wealth redistribution, because cutting a hair, have your hair cut by someone in the neighborhood, it's non-tradable, yeah? The price depends not on the service quality, but only depends on the average income of this neighborhood. So get your haircut in your hometown, for example, in Amsterdam or in Hague, it should be 20 or 30 euros. Am I right?
Today even 40 euros. Yes.
40 euros. But have my haircut in like city like Beijing is let me count, maybe €5. Maybe €5. Okay. But if the same barber is the guy who have the serviceman, and the same customer, the same process of labor, same service. If the place moves to Africa, to South Asia, you see, the price could be 40 times the difference. Why? It's mainly because it's only a process of redistribution amongst neighborhood members instead of real creation wealth. So any nation, my observation is, my conclusion is, any nation, if you want to get your economy developed, you will have to get something tradable, get something tradable, be competitive in at least one tradable sector. Now, for example, manufacturing, of course, we all know, but some other sectors, like financial sectors, finance is also tradable goods. Finance service is also tradable goods. It also could enrich your region or your country. Now, of course, it has shortcomings. And even like gambling in the casino industry. Gambling and the casino industry, although morally is bad, at least East Asia as a standard, it's a really bad thing. But it's also tradable sector. And because it will help that region to get money, to make money from other regions. Then you could get rich by these sectors. But in today's GDP calculation, it's really misleading because you put this tradable sector and the non-tradable sector together. That's my framework.
I fully understand your way of thinking, and we as economists, we always make that distinction between, let's say, the GDP per capita in nominal terms and the GDP per capita in purchasing power parity, to make sure that the lower price of the haircut in China should be increase the purchasing power of the person, of the people, compared to what you normally would have in nominal terms. So we are making a differentiation between tradables and non-tradables, and we put that in the GDP per capita in nominal terms and purchasing power. But maybe in line with your view, it is not so much income earned or value added, but it is more the reallocation of income.
Exactly. That's my point. Actually, I disagree with the GDP calculation, and I do not agree with the GDP PPP calculation, because according to some research, the PPP also misleading. Purchasing power parity is also misleading, because if you define something, if you use a PPP term, that implies that countries like India, their currency is undervalued. Am I right? Yeah. If you say PPP is, for example, India is, I don't remember right now, for example, $3 trillion economic size GDP. And if it's PPP is like 4.5 trillion, okay, that implies that its currency is undervalued like 33%, for example.
Yeah.
Or 50%, let's say. So that makes people think that potentially that Indian currency are going to be appreciating against the US dollar in the coming years. But in fact, no. I'm very sure that overwhelming majority of the currencies, including Indian rupee, is going to depreciate against the US dollar in the coming decade. Yeah, because I made some statistics about these currencies. So that's why I prefer to use tradable sector, purely tradable sector, to talk about the different sides of the economy and its quality instead of GDP or PPP. Yeah.
And you're fully right. You can use the over or undervalued currency to forecast the development of the exchange rate. That is indeed also possible, but you may question mark that because all kind of other factors may influence that, which are not related to the overvalued currency.
Okay, so it's a very happy conversation, and I hope next time offline we can meet and have a cup of coffee or have dinner together and have more discussions.
Would be very nice. Well, thank you very much for your insights, and hope indeed that we can continue in the future on this topic. Very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And this was another episode of China Now, a show that opens a window to the present and the future of the ASEAN. Hope you enjoy it. See you next time.